Ever since the introduction of 1.9 PvP in 2016, 1.8 PvP has been in an existential crisis. This is because to be able to play the old PvP system, you have to downgrade to a really old version at this point. And a lot of people simply don't see the point to switch versions just to play PvP. And outside of that, there are also the many disadvantages that 1.8 PvP has. And in this video I'll talk about the future of 1.8 PvP and if it even has one. So first of all, I would like to mention that 1.8 PvP will never be completely dead, because there will always be some servers that still support it and that will have some kind of that will have an active community, because there are always OG players who don't accept change. But outside of that, the main PvP version, which right now I would still consider to be 1.8, even though 1.9 is growing pretty fast, is most likely actually going to switch soon, because 1.8 PvP is not only too old, it also carries a massive problem that many players have as a reason to not play the version, which to be honest is completely understandable, and that is the advantage that click speed gives players in 1.8. So if you don't know, 1.8 has some kind of mechanic in place that makes it so when you hit someone, your velocity gets multiplied by 0.6, and by velocity it means the speed at which you walk, but also the knockback you take, which means that when you click fast, you yourself slow down, but you also take less knockback. And this is also why drag clicking allows you to take almost zero knockback in some circumstances. Now, knockback is not always the deciding factor in a fight. Completely the opposite. Pretty often movement is way more important, but also secondaries like rods or lava or just generally blocks can influence a fight way more than CPS. But in most scenarios, CPS simply makes the game easier. It doesn't mean that a low CPS player can't beat a high CPS player, but that the high CPS player has a much easier time learning PvP than the low CPS player, and this is especially obvious on servers that haven't adapted their knockback to decrease the CPS advantage, like for example PvP Gym has, which has a knockback that is way less influenced by CPS than for example Mineman Club. And this means that on some servers you can just click 20 CPS, and if you have good aim and good spacing, you can just combo someone infinitely simply because you have 20 CPS, and that is a pretty unfair advantage, and it turns many people away from 1.8 PvP. And I think this is a lot of lost potential, because for a lot of people, including myself, 1.9 PvP simply isn't as exciting or as interesting as 1.8. Now I know this is really opinion based, but I personally just really don't want to switch to 1.8, because even if the CPS advantage is very annoying, I still have way more fun in 1.8. Now I know there's also the new PvP version coming, but that's another subject. I want to mainly talk about if 1.8 in its current state can even have some success, because let's face it, 1.8 PvP is probably still the best for minigames. While in raw 1v1s or in SMPs, 1.9 PvP could be seen as the better version. In minigames, which is what most people play, it simply just lacks the fast dynamic, and you could even say easier PvP, because even though 1.8 PvP is everything but easy at high competitive levels, in minigames it is not as hard to understand as 1.9 PvP, and you can focus more on the strategical aspects of these minigames. 1.9 PvP simply just feels too slow, for especially with the introductions of shields, and this means that a lot of people just quit the game because they have the choice between a system they don't like and doesn't work for the game modes they play, and a system that has unfair advantages for people with certain mice. Which brings me to one of the solutions that exists, and that is to add a certain debounce time to every mice, which means that you would not be able to double click. Now, double clicking is a problem because it simply gives certain mice an advantage over other mice. And even if every mouse would be able to do it, it still makes it so everybody has a really high click speed, which makes the game way harder to learn. Why would you have to break your mouse and click with 2 fingers just to be able to have the average level in a game? That simply is something that only Minecraft has, and that honestly it doesn't need to have. I think a lot of people would have the same fun they have in the game, if not more, if everybody had to just normally click their mouse. And this means that, for example, a CPS cap at 10 CPS would already make the game way fairer for everybody. But the problem is that most 1.8 players will not accept that, because they are too used to the current system, and any server that will add such a CPS cap will instantly lose players. So the only solution would be for every server to implement such a rule at once. And this is pretty hard to pull off, because if only one server doesn't do it, everybody will go on that server. Now, something that is sadly pretty ignored by the majority of the 1.8 and 1.9 community is that 1.8 PvP can mostly be made in 1.18 or generally in the newest versions. I will take the server HG Labor as an example, which has managed to bring back the old Knockback and remove the hit cooldown, which makes the PvP almost like 1.8. It honestly is really incredible how similar it feels to 1.8. It just misses block hitting. And this shows that there's a lot of wasted potential. A lot of servers could simply update to the newest version but still have the old PvP if this gets developed more. Now, I think that the best solution would still be for Mojang to somehow implement back 1.8 PvP, or at least add some way that there is a click speed limitation in Minecraft. It doesn't have to be like a direct command, but it could just be something that the servers could do through various ways, such as modifying the attributes of each weapon, like it is already done. And this would make 1.8 PvP viable again in the newest versions. And I think this would really fix the split between both versions. If you want to play the 1.8, you can just go to another game mode, like it would just be another game mode, like there are already in 1.9 different game modes. For example, you could just switch directly from playing on sword PvP to axe PvP to then 1.8 PvP. And it would make the game much more diverse and way more interesting also for newer players. And it would make it so servers have a lot more possibilities. You could, for example, have no cooldown in Bed Wars and in Sky Wars, but a cooldown in Battle Box. I think this might revive the now dying 1.8 community and generally unite the community more. Because if everyone plays on the same version, just different game modes with different mechanics, it still is a way more united community than more. I find it pretty sad that servers don't use the potential they have, and it honestly gives me the feeling that servers just stopped caring, or the community doesn't really want even to change things, because if they wanted to, 1.8 PvP could be brought almost entirely back in the newest versions. But servers that do so are generally really unknown, and this is really a sad state the community is in. Now I know there are also the new combat test snapshots, but let's be honest, it has almost been 2 years now. Mojang isn't bringing them out anytime soon. They probably have way bigger issues right now, especially with the wild updates. I think it would even be a better solution to just give the tools. It doesn't have to even be like a direct game rule, but just give the servers in vanilla the tools to just bring back 1.8 PvP by changing certain attributes of certain items. For example, you could just simply change the knockback a player takes by modifying its attributes, which means that with a few commands you could already just have 1.8 PvP back on a server, and it would make it so much easier. I really hope more people will get aware of the solutions that 1.8 has. And to answer my question, will 1.8 PvP die? Well, to be honest, it will, because right now the community is in a pretty bad state, with people literally cheating and that not being seen as an issue anymore. People just accept the fact that others cheat, and they don't even question it. Oh, and also one thing, rodding there should also be a way to bring back rodding from in 1.18, but that is already possible through server plugins. So I don't see this as a really big issue, because any server which has decent plugins would be able to have almost 1.8 PvP just without block hitting. And yeah, I think this would make Minecraft really interesting for everybody again. A lot of people don't like the new system and simply quit the game because of the change. So yeah, that's it. You can check out my Twitter if you want to see me ramble about random stuff. Also join the Combat Test Discord if you want to learn more about the Combat Test snapshots. And yeah, that's it. Bye.